Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to be a part of this year's TEDxUTK. Today, I'm here to tell you a little bit about a very special place, my role in helping make that place a reality, and how that place has impacted so many people that have come to visit it. So everyone has a particular relationship with this day. I was living and working in Manhattan at the time, and I remember exactly what I was wearing. I was wearing raspberry-colored crop pants and a black shirt, and I was on my way to meet my boss at the time at a job site. And I had stopped on the corner of 5th Avenue and 14th Street, and I eyewitnessed the explosion in the South Tower. And this is after I was trying to process what had happened in the first tower. And while I and all of us had never experienced anything like this before, deep down I felt like we were living through a significant moment in history. So New York City had lost all cell phone contact, the subways had shut down, and so the information I was learning was coming from word on the streets. And people were huddled around open car doors, listening to the radio. They were gathered in front of electronic store windows, watching live news coverage of what was happening just a dozen or so blocks downtown. And amidst the disbelief and the confusion and the sorrow and intermittent military planes flying overhead, the word on the street was that the Pentagon had just been hit. So this news elevated the utter significance of what was likely playing out around us. The year that followed was intense. It was very scary and it was tremendously sad, especially for those of us who were living in Manhattan at the time, as I and Keith Kaseman, my husband and partner, were. And like so many others, we wanted to contribute something positive to during these times that were so incredibly unsettling. So in June of 2002, we learned that the Pentagon Memorial was the first of the 3 sites that was going to have a design competition. And since Keith and I had just graduated from architecture school, we felt maybe this is the forum into which we could contribute an idea, however brief it would be, towards a conversation that would be had about how to remember these people who had lost their lives that tragic day. And the due date for that competition was September 11th, 2002. So this was our competition entry board. The competition was 100% anonymous. It was free to enter, and it was open to absolutely anybody. And what struck us most was a statement that was written by a core group of family members who lost loved ones at the Pentagon. And they charged us to create a place that would make you think, but not tell you what to think or how to feel. And this really resonated with us because there was no one way to remember that day. And what it meant was that individual thought and reflection and remembrance was paramount to the mission of this place. How do you make a place that is infinitely interpretable and is unlike anything you've ever experienced before? So there were over 1,200 entries. We were one of 6 finalists and then ultimately unanimously selected as the winner. So it took us 6 years to go from this to this. So for a quick orientation, the memorial is a 2-acre park located directly in front of the side of the building that was hit by American Airlines Flight 77. And this is really rare in the context of memorials of Washington, D.C. Most, if not all of them, are depicting and dedicated to an event that happened somewhere else in the world. The building was completely restored by the 1-year anniversary of the attacks. This showed our resolve and our resilience, but it also erased the evidence of what happened that day and what happened to the individuals that lost their lives. And this charred piece of limestone was the only indicator, and it was located at the point of impact on the building, which you can see here in this little circle. That little dark spot is that charred piece of limestone. This part of the building is completely inaccessible to the public, especially when you're now in a new world of heightened security awareness, warning levels, and preparedness. So it was incredibly important to the families that the memorials serve as a way to tell the story and really as a reminder to generations to come of what happened here that day. So we were able to create a memorial that is open to the public 24/7, only about 100 yards from that charred stone. So a quick overview in how the memorial is organized if you haven't been there. It's organized along a timeline. Each one of these lines corresponds to a year of birth. So the youngest victim was 3 years old, so she was born in 1998, and the eldest victim was 70, born in 1930. And as you can see, there's a big gap here, so there were 5 children involved in this tragedy, and this gap indicates that there were no victims between the ages of 11 and 21. So the park its intent is to give hints and clues about what happened that day and who's remembered here. The age lines are parallel with the trajectory that Flight 77 took into the building. So as a visitor, you're immediately oriented to the events that were unfolding that morning. And then as you see through the distribution, that this is really just a sampling of everyday life. These people were at work or they were traveling, and they're now forever remembered here together. It took us 2 years to assemble our core team, only a sampling of which is represented here. And as you can see, they came from all corners of our country. And it took 2 more years and countless super technical design adjustments to figure out exactly how we were going to make these highly customized memorial unit benches made of stainless steel, granite, precast concrete, light, and water. New production techniques were developed by our incredible team to carry all of this out and to really make it look easy. And then it took 2 more years to make everything and install it on site. So if you would entertain this for a second, and for the super geeks out there, I'll breeze through a sampling of some of the behind the scenes work that went on to make this happen. This is the sand cast mold that would cast 2 stainless steel pieces at a time. The pouring of the molten steel, which was always really awesome to see. And like the birth of many things, it was really messy at first. This was really cool. The stainless steel alloy that we used, it had to be reheated to 2400 degrees Fahrenheit and then quickly cooled. And this process allowed the molecules within the stainless steel alloy to freeze into a configuration for maximum corrosion resistance, because we didn't want anything to happen to the stainless steel throughout all the varying weather conditions. And even with so many computer-controlled machinery that we were working with, it really came down to a deep care and knowledge of true craft masters who poured their heart and soul into making each one of these memorial units perfect. For instance, this is Abe Youssef. He is the best metal polisher as far as we're concerned, and he just so happens to be just an incredibly generous and kind person. So in all, there were lots and lots of steps to achieve a highly finished and timeless quality, all again, in a way to make it seem easy and straightforward. For in the end, these were the people that we were working so hard for. Each one of these people lost either a spouse or a sibling, and this was the first prototype bench installed and the first set of smiling faces that were evidence enough for us to know that every step along the way had been an incredible honor for us and well worth all the hard work. So meanwhile, in parallel, the site was being prepared for the installation of the memorial unit components. These are foundation units, the concrete water, the basins coming in, followed by the age lines putting in and the planting soil, and then finally the trees being put in shortly before we dedicated the park. And here are a few other design details that help tell the story of that day. This is what we call the zero line, and it is a demarcation between the present, which is life since 9/11, and the past, which was life leading up to that tragic moment. And the ground cover changes from hardscaping to crushed gravel, so as you enter the park, you as a visitor hear your own footsteps. So the place has an emphasis on life while we remember those that we lost. The memorial units are oriented in two different directions, and that's to say who was in the building at the time that they died and who was on board Flight 77. The names are engraved at the very end of the cantilevers, so if you read the name and the building is in the background of your view, they were in the building. There were 125 individuals. Conversely, like this one over here, when you read the name and the sky is in the background, they were aboard the plane. Again, hints and clues about who was remembered here. There were really beautiful moments about how the surrounding environment was captured in the curves of the stainless steel, bringing essentially the sunset down into the pools of water, and how almost by magic, the stainless steel appears to float effortlessly above the water surface. That was a really difficult detail to pull off. Again, part of the way of making it look easy. And the birth years are noted along the perimeter bench, and they serve as a terminus to the age lines that score across the entire width of the site. So everything was in place. All we needed were people. This is the evening before the dedication of the memorial on the 7th anniversary. The opening day was probably one of the most emotionally charged days of my life. Over 16,000 people attended the dedication ceremony, and seeing the smiles on the families' faces, family members who had not returned to the site since the day they lost their loved one, and knowing that we played this role in helping turn a place of such tragedy and sorrow into one of peace and solace and reflection. And my face hurt from the roller coaster of emotions that it displayed over the course of that day. There were family reunions and quiet reflections and playful and innocent interactions. And now the park just simply exists for all visitors to come and experience and engage in a way that works and feels right for them. Some wonderful surprises are these dynamic reflections that happen when the sun is at high noon, and new traditions of remembrance. Again, it was amazing to see how people felt the water was almost like a vase to leave flowers in. And little 3-year-old Dana Falkenberg, her bench is the first one you encounter when you enter the park. And it causes a moment of pause to realize that she and her 8-year-old sister and their 2 parents were all lost here that day. So it's a place whose beauty changes across the course of the day and across the seasons. So this image always brings the story full circle back for me. When Keith and I started designing this memorial, we asked ourselves, how do we create a peaceful and contemplative place for, say, a mom and her 2 kids to come and remember their dad? So this image tells me that perhaps we achieved that in some way. And really, to just know that this place exists, it's been open for almost 10 years, and that it has impacted in some small way the hundreds and thousands of people who have come there so far. And they can tell us what is important to them and what they walk away from after visiting. And so to wrap up, I'd like to share an experience of our own son, Oscar, who's here today, who visited the memorial for the first time when he was almost 4 years old. Keith took him to DC for a boys' weekend, and when they were heading to the memorial, Keith didn't prepare Oscar. He didn't lay down any ground rules. Instead, he said, "You do what you want when you're there. You know, this is a place for you to explore and to engage." And completely unprompted, he discovered on his own some of the special features we had hoped only the design connoisseurs would notice. And of course, as any almost 4-year-old would find fun and adventurous. So this is the video of Oscar's first moments at the park.
Yeah, we did.
Are you guys the designers? So we just hope that for this generation that lived through this horrible day, and for the generations that will only learn about it in the history books, that this memorial will serve as a place for individual thought and reflection and laughter and tears, and that its memories will live on in the footsteps of all of its visitors. Thank you.